Hello, this is Kris Nelson from evolveconsciousness.org. I made some infographics in June of 2014, a lot of them based on consciousness, and then a series afterwards relating that to reality and natural law. So first I'll explain about 9 infographics I did relating to consciousness and natural law and reality and causality, and it includes the Trivium as well. And then I guess I'll do another audio for the aspects of perception and reality and how that relates to natural law as well, since it automatically relates to consciousness since we're dealing with perception, but also limits our understanding of natural law through the limitation of our perception and our consciousness. So that's a little introduction on what this audio and probably the next one will be. I'm trying to get through the infographics that I have previously done that I have not explained in an audio or text format. I made the infographics in a self-explanatory way, but I think some people may not understand them properly or as fully as I intended to express them. So to begin, there's an infographic called Unity Consciousness. So here I have a Trinity setup of the Trinity of Consciousness, and this is with thought and emotion as internal aspects and action as an external aspect, and thought and emotion feed back upon each other. I'll get back to that in the next infographic. And thought deals with knowledge and quote mind. Emotion deals with care and the quote heart. But these are both aspects of consciousness. It's not in the brain or in the physical heart, even though the brain is responsible for our ability to manifest consciousness in a physical body. That's not what I'm not talking about physical aspects. These are internal aspects of consciousness. So mind and heart is the same thing in consciousness. It's just left and right brain. So again, the brain, I'm not talking about literal brain aspects, whether it can be verified in brain physiology and functionality and electrochemical signals or not. That's not what I'm talking about. It's symbolic aspects of consciousness, which we refer to as left and right brain, as mind and heart, as knowledge and care. And ultimately what we're trying to do is unify our thoughts and emotions, these two complementary aspects of consciousness, represented as in the masculine and feminine qualities. We're unifying these to unify opposites, or quote opposites, because they're not actually opposites, they're complements. Black and white are opposites. The color spectrum in between has varying degrees of relationships. Some can be opposites in terms of a color wheel, where you put the color spectrum on one wheel and you don't have white and black, as I've shown in my Spectrum of Living infographic. But we're talking about left and right modalities of the consciousness, which is symbolized as knowledge and care, mind and heart, etc. Ultimately, we unify them to bring our, quote, guts, which is possibly the stomach brain, into develop the courage in order to actualize our willpower. So recent infographics I've made are different from this one. The green color was going off of what Mark Passio had used, which is erroneous in my understanding of color symbolism. I used it originally going off of that, but now that I've enhanced my understanding of symbolism, I have remade new infographics that use more appropriate colors, which are blue and red, as green is the middle point, which are representative of consciousness, care, and will, which I have outlined in 3-part presentations of natural law boundary conditions, spectrum of living, and the philosopher's stone. In those ones, I find the colors are more representative, even though they don't deal with the Trinity of Consciousness, but I have since remade my infographics to reflect those more accurate color symbolism, which will be coming out in the future in a big natural law presentation covering information and aspects that I have not seen anyone talk about ever. So it should be very good. To continue with the infographic, so we're going to combine our thoughts and emotions. They're going to feed back and we're going to produce our action in the world. Now, this is a potential stimulus, as you can see on the left side of the triangle, because this is a recursive iteration, it's a loop, it's a cycle, as you'll see in infographic 5, I think. And this is also included in a previous presentation on the circle of life, relating consciousness, causality, logic, and the trivium. So you can take a look at that old presentation for more information as well, but it'll be coming up in a newer infographic, in infographic 5 in this presentation, as well as a redone color symbolism infographic in the future. So our thoughts, emotions, and actions are not conflicting when we are in unity consciousness. As we think, so we feel, and so we do. Our actions do not betray our words, thoughts, or feelings. So I have blue to represent right action and red to represent wrong action. So for unity consciousness to be actualized, you have to have an integration, a unity, a harmony within yourself between your thoughts, emotions, and actions. So that's why they're all checked and in blue, because they all align and they follow. One follows from the other. And this is non-contradiction. This is part of logic, where things follow. One thing follows from the other. When things don't follow, then you have contradiction. It's all logic. Logic is a foundation of reality, no matter how much people want to deny it. If one contradicts the other, then it is not unity, but disunity, disharmony, opposition, conflict, and like I said, contradiction. Because where you have your thoughts and emotions aligned, no right, well then your action, what follows is your action that is wrong. So you're in disunity consciousness. You're not harmonized. You're not united. One thing does not follow from the other. Therefore, it's in contradiction, because when things follow from the other and they make sense, then they're harmonized and they're non-contradictory and they are logical. So when you're in disunity consciousness, you are illogical. You are in illogical living. Living in fallacies. Living in error. Living in falsity. Similarly, if you have thought, but you don't have emotion, then you won't have action correct either. And similarly, if your thought is corrupted, if you have negative knowledge, but you're feeling reality correctly, well, you're still going to produce wrong action, unless your emotions override your thoughts, but it's still not unity consciousness, even if you do the right action after you have the right emotion, because your thoughts are not right. So it's impossible to actually create right action, because the emotions are only the validator. I'll be talking about this more in the future in my uncovering of nature and the different aspects. But CARR is a valuation, it's a judgment with logic in order to motivate us and drive us to care and actualize our will in the direction we want. So the thoughts are the initial expression, the emanation point, the essence point. So if your thoughts are corrupted, even if your emotions are sensing it right, you're still going to have wrong action because it comes from your thoughts. That's why there's a feedback, because if your thoughts are corrupted and your emotions okay, well, there's supposed to be a feedback whereby you return back to an inductive process and deductive process to correct your thoughts and make them proper so that they match your emotional alignment with morality. And then your actions will follow suit. On to infographic number 2. This is the infographic Trinity of Consciousness symbolism. And this is the first infographic I made since starting my site, and it was made in February 2014, I believe. So I was trying to put the Trinity of Consciousness in terms of the many multi-layered aspects of color symbolism that apply. So if we look at the colors at the bottom left, we have green unified or activated state. So when your left and right are united, they become the whole, which is in green, which is what I was talking about in the previous infographic, which is why my colors have changed, because my colors afterwards did not match this original infographic I made with these colors of red, blue, and green. It is actually more accurate than some of the color symbolism where I copied the concept of green for cause and red for effect from Pasio, and then I applied the Trivium and natural law and things like that to the color, but it wasn't the right color symbolism. I didn't do it right. This one is more accurate. So green is unified between the two, and the blue is the internal or receptive, the feminine, and the red is the external, active or masculine. So when you unify the internal and the external, the left and the right, the mind and the heart, the whatever, you get unified in an activated state. So that's when you have your left and right brain unify into the activated pineal gland, into the activated third eye, into the activated one eye. Your dual eyes, your dual consciousness, walking on the checkerboard floor of black and white in seemingly opposition, because you're an internal contradiction, you're an internal conflict, internal non-consistency, non-congruence, disharmony, disunity, because of the conflict in thoughts, emotions, and actions. We can look at it in terms of black and white. They're opposites in that way, because you're in contradiction inside, and that's a contradiction in how you express reality and understand reality. So you remove the contradiction between the blue and the red, and you create green, which is the unified or activated state. So I'll just start from the left, right, and go up as consciousness goes. But at the bottom, I'll just say that we have effects, and then the effects from the reality are events and effects that affect us. They have an effect upon us. And then our thoughts process reality that affects us. Our emotions have another effect, and we value what's in reality. And that brings us to our actions. So I think, feel, and act based on the existence of now and what has come before now, i.e., that is to say, the effects manifested upon reality. Cause and effect are central. Thoughts and emotion alone get nothing done in the manifested reality, but are the foundations for right action. So thought and emotion are essentially what's most important to create the action, but the action is what's most important to create reality. So it all comes back down to the foundations of consciousness, which are thought and emotion. To begin at thoughts, we have red, blue, and green. So the reason I have thoughts in red, blue, and green, because they have the most aspects of the three. The reason is because red, because they are the first active force, they are the emanation point. So that's the first point. It's where things start from. When you're doing something, it's also a generation. So we have the unified mind, the one eye, and the generated is activated. So you see when something's activated, it has is activated. So it's also red when it's green. We have the analytic intellect plus the imaginative intuitive. So we're talking about left and right brain, even though the emotions are part of the left-right brain dichotomy as well. But we're looking at it from this specific perspective. So the unified mind, the one eye, is an activated state, which equals the analytic intellect plus the imaginative intuitive. It's actually the mind and heart together. They're just different aspects. Even within the mind, you have a left and right brain, but then you have the mind and the heart, which is a left and right brain aspect. Because you have caring and compassion, which are considered right brain aspects. So the symbolism is multi-layered. It's not, precision, clear-cut logic. It has blending into other things. So you have to be, you have to have an imaginative mind to see how the colors blend into each other at different layers. So this is internal, because we're an internal consciousness, just like emotions are, but it's the cognitive rather than the affective one, as the emotions are on the right. They're affective, and thoughts are cognitive. Even though emotions are cognitive as well, because they require thoughts and cognition, but they are affective because they affect us physiologically. In science, it's the science of affection. Affective cognition, or cognitive affection. Anyways, it's a whole field of science now. Instead of calling them emotions, they're called affection, because they affect you. They have an effect physiologically in your body. You feel it. So internal cognitive generative essence is internal and active. It's internal, but it's active because it's the emanation essence point that's generating everything else. Without thoughts, you wouldn't have emotions or actions. You'd be nothing. You'd be dead. You'd be a plant. You'd be a rock. You'd be something that wouldn't move, something that wouldn't express itself. And this is, it can be considered the religio father in some sense, because in the religious sense, the father is, the creator. So in that respect, in religion, Christianity, Judaism, I don't know if Allah and Islam is considered male. Probably is. All the three Abrahamic religions, or derivative religions, are all patriarchal and male dominator type, at least exoterically. And this is, in our thoughts, we have speech. Speech words are external actions, so that's why it's a really active aspect, because you can culminate in actions, but you're not going to be acting in the real world. But your words that come from your mind, that you act through your mouth, that you vocalize, they're an expression of internal thought through external speech. It's not the most profound form of action, but it is a form of action of a weaker force. Physical force is stronger than just verbal force. So we go to emotions on the right, and that is blue and green because it's not external acting. You're not talking. If you're going to be talking about your emotions, you're going to be using thoughts, so we're back to thoughts to express emotions as a form of action. But emotions are primarily internal, and there is a generative active state to it, which would be the heart and CARR, which is generative. So there's the generative essence in our minds and thoughts as the source point in consciousness, and there's also the generative essence of CARR as represented through the quote heart. As I said in the previous infographic, the quote heart and the quote mind are the same thing, which is consciousness. You can look at it as a left and right brain dichotomy again. But the point is to bring them together, to use the heart and the mind together as a unified mind, a unified consciousness. So you can generate properly in the thought domain and generate properly in the affective domain. So properly in the cognitive and properly in the affective. So our heart CARR generative is an activated state from positive and negative recognition in reality that develops the true CARR. If you're going to ignore the negative in reality, then you're going to live in positivity and in a positivity mask of optimism bias, and you're not going to see things as you are. You're not going to be aware of evil. You're going to be perpetuating evil because you're not going to be aware of how you're creating evil, and then evil will continue and it'll lead to your own self-inflicted suffering and self-imposed enslavement into chaos and entropy and stagnation and the death of everything. So to develop CARR, you need to face the evil. People who do not look at the evil, New Agers I've lived with, some people I've met, they don't look at the evil. So they don't care as much about things going on outside of their own personal lives. That's why their focus is I'm going to teach you how to enjoy life, when I'm trying to teach them how to care more, how to think properly, how to learn so that they can understand more of reality. No, they don't want to do that. They just want to enjoy life. They want to have fun. They want to stay in the pleasure trap. They also want to believe in contradictory aspects, such as, oh, there's no such thing as perfection. When, you talk about how I want to better myself, I want to improve, I want to evolve, and then, oh, well, there's no such thing as perfection. Then when you tell them that their life isn't perfect, that they still have improvements to do, then they want to say, oh, well, my life is perfect. So when you're talking about how you want to improve your own life, oh, then they're like, oh, well, that's a waste of your time. There's no such thing as perfection. And then when you talk about how other people need to improve their lives, then they don't see a need for that. It's not that there is no perfection, it's that they're already perfect. I've had this played against me by the New Ager I lived with. It's ridiculous. So you have to face evil, along with the good, the truth, and the beauty and horror, positive and negative, good and evil, right and wrong. You have to know it, and that will develop your care. That's why when you evolve consciousness and you increase that force of consciousness, of awareness of reality, which is the force of love, that helps you care more and have true care, that universal love and true agape for other beings and other things outside of yourself, and the well-being of all of our survival, rather than just myself or just my species. So emotions are internal. They're affective, receptive part of the sacred feminine. And this is the religious mother or Holy Spirit. And that's the feminine aspect in Holy Trinity. The spirit in which we do things is the driving force, and that's where care, the generation, the generative force, is the driving force that generates us into action, to actualize our will. So there's a generative essence, the first emanation point of thought. And then we have a generative essence in care, which is the, quote, spirit in which we do things, which is why this is associated with the spiritual aspect, because it's more internal. The thoughts are generated in our mind based on reality, but our emotions do involve thought in order to process what's going on in our body and to express it. But it's also largely an internal automatic process that we don't have if we do not balance and unify the dual aspects of thoughts and emotions, left and right brain, mind and heart. Then our emotions can be used against us because we're not using our cognitive aspects to control it. As we could look at it as a religio father, we're not controlling ourselves, our own consciousness, our thoughts, emotions, and actions ourselves. We're letting emotions run amok and just engage in reality and other people in a reactive capacity, not thinking things through. And that's how all animals live. It's just a reactionary capacity in terms of emotions. All animals are capable of thinking things, but they have a largely behavioral programming aspect, more so than humans. We have a behavioral programming aspect as well, but we have more free will. Animals have free will as well. This will be all in my new presentation on natural law, getting into nature and what it actually is, and different aspects of nature. So I'm not going to talk about it more than I already did. I'm just going to be too much of a tangent. To continue from thoughts, we feed back with emotions. That's why we need to unify them. They're interlinked, influence each other. And the spirit is the unseen realm, which is why we do things, the spirit in which we do things, the driving force, what motivates us. So emotions without thought are not going to motivate you to anything at all. You have to have thought in order to motivate you to something beyond basic survival and behavioral programming. Now, animals do have some thought capacity, but like I said, they're more in a reactive, responsive mode from stimulus. Whereas we can bypass that automated reactive mode and take time to think about our situation rather than react from emotional states and emotional imbalances. That's why the balancing of the brain, or the mind and heart, the balancing of consciousness is important in this capacity to bring you to better control your emotions through the religio father aspect of the emotions. We could look at it as the patriarchal controller. Well, thoughts are the higher order capacity. That's why in previous presentation on consciousness and the brain based on Mark Passio's podcast, we have the R complex, the reptilian hindbrain, the base brain, lower consciousness. Then we have the mammalian brain, which is the limbic system, sends out chemicals to feel emotions, and that's based on our thoughts and our ability to process reality, even at a subconscious level, in order to generate and send all those processes and signals to experience emotions, or fight or flight from the R complex, reptilian hindbrain. But that higher order aspect of thoughts is the neocortex, and that's above the other two, and that's also the unified aspect between the reptilian and the emotions. And then the reptilian becomes the father aspect, and then the emotions the mother aspect, and then the thoughts are the higher order governor of the lower order aspects. So you can look at it that way. That's why I say symbolism is multi-layered. Here we can look at it as thoughts as being religio father, but in another aspect they're the generated son from the older reptilian and mammalian aspects of the brain to the neocortical higher order consciousness of the divine male child, which is a byproduct of the father and the mother, which would be the father of the reptilian brain, survival, fight or flight, and the mother, which is the mammalian limbic system, responsible for sending out electrochemicals for affection, for feeling reality. So from thoughts to emotions, we go up to the last part, which is actions. Before we get to actions, just read those two little paragraphs. Thought and emotion are unseen internal spirit aspects of consciousness, and they are non-dual, non-contradictory, in non-opposition, united, harmonized, aligned with right, good, truth, as unified mind, one eye, and developed heart care center, then the wisdom of right action is possible. So not only do you need to unify your thoughts, left and right, you need to unify thoughts and emotions, which is mind and heart, and then you can get to the wisdom of right action. So thoughts and emotions alone are not enough. We need to engage, create, manifest, generate, and act in external reality, not only internal. So our actions, now one's in red and green. So they all have green because they're all based in activating those potentials, in realizing the infinite potential and value we have. So that's an activated state. It's a progressively more activated state in various degrees, levels, and grades as we evolve consciousness. So that's why thoughts was in red, blue, and green, because it had most of the three. Emotions was more blue to reach that green activated state, and actions are red, and they need to reach that activated state in green. So it's the wisdom of right action. And this is external, conative, active, sacred masculine. So rather than internal cognitive, which is of thoughts which were internal and active, and emotions which were internal affective, which were internal and passive, because your thoughts were internal active, the emotions are internal passive. So that's internal and passive, so that's two blues. And in thoughts there was internal and active, so that's a blue and a red. But in action we have external, so there's red, and it's conative. And that's where we have cognitive, affective, and conative. Those are the three scientific terms for thoughts, emotions, and actions. So thoughts are cognitive, emotions are affective, and actions and behaviors are conative. This is It's a sacred masculine because we're acting, and the emotions are sacred feminine. And the thoughts are, because of the generative sense, they don't apply in that sense. But if you look at it in the first thing, in the religious sense, then it'd be the father, and then the mother, and then you'd have the religio son, which would be the union of the father and the mother, and they birth the son. That's the divine male child, which is the wedding of the father, the internal masculine, and the mother, the internal feminine, to produce external masculine synthesis. So you had internal feminine and internal masculine. So that was a preponderance of feminine, and that produced an external masculine, which is a preponderance of masculine. You had a blue-red and a blue-blue, create a red-red-green, which is a synthesis, is the green, because we're unifying. So, to summarize, if we follow the arrows, after the actions, we create effects in the world through causal actions and behaviors, so these become the effects. So they go inside of us, or you could just look at it as another downward arrow to thoughts on the side of the triangle. If I put it inside, the actions are effects. They're internal generative manifestations and external actions in the world. So when other actions are created by other people that affect us, or we create other actions that affect people, those actions that are produced as effects, and when we're thinking of causality and cause and effect, thoughts and emotions are the cause, and actions are the effect. The effect that is produced is a result of internal generative manifestations from thoughts and emotions, plus the external action in the world. And that's the Trinity of Consciousness that we create reality through. The next infographic is free will, choice, and causality. This is just a brief introduction into the new color symbolism that I developed that was based on Mark Passio's red and green oppositional model, which I now view as incorrect, which I had already understood as my previous infographic demonstrated in February. But because I was influenced by Mark Passio's work, I chose to mimic the colors he used, which I will no longer do because now I understand it more profoundly of how my previous infographic was more accurate. So, for now, you can think of the green as being blue. My apologies. So we have our free will choice for creating effects, and we have no free will choice to experience effects. And this has to do with causality, where we have choice in our free will to produce effects. But then when those effects are generated, we don't have any choice but to experience them. So we can create effects, but other effects that are created, or once our effects are sent out into the world to affect other people, there's nothing you can do. They're done. All you can do is be affected by that reality that has been manifested. That's why the power for change doesn't come in what has already manifested in reality, which are the effects. The power for change comes from the internal aspects, which create that change, which is where free will is. That's where the choice is. That's where you can create the change that manifests in reality later on. So we have choice at the top, where we start, and then we're going to go down and eventually reach the effect. And choice, cause at the top to the effect at the bottom. Cause is represented by choice, and the effect is represented by no choice. Where you have choice, that's where you have consciousness and free will to act. And where you have no choice is when that action has been manifested in reality as something that actually occurs and has manifested. Then you don't have any choice. And then that's where causality comes into action externally, because we have internal causality between our thoughts and emotions that create the effect of action, but there's also the external causality where the effects we generate affect other people, and the effects other people generate affect us. So that's external causality, and that's where we don't have a choice. Because things have already been created, we can't change what already is. You have to create something new or let go of what already is in order to let it disintegrate into nothingness so we can create something else. So from cause, the process of cause starts with the effects from reality. That's why it's a loop. So the effects from below come into the cause, come into the causal agent, which is us. So the effects of reality affect us, and that's the input from reality, and grammar is the knowledge, and that's processed through thought, which is the mind. And we use processing and logic in order to understand more, and that can bring us to care through our emotions, which is the quote heart, in order to care what we want to do so that we output in rhetoric, in the wisdom of right action, hopefully, or the foolishness of wrong action, the courage and the willpower, or the laziness and apathy and cowardice, if we don't have the wisdom of right action, in order to act. And that's the quote guts. And that produces the effect in the world, which affects reality, and reality then in turn affects us, and that's why it keeps going in a circle. This will be explained more in nature, in the natural law presentation to come in the future. So we have our choice on the left, which is free will, and that's the randomness aspect. And we have on the right no choice and causality, which is determinism. So once something has been manifest, it's a determinant aspect of reality that cannot be altered because it's been manifested. Or it can be altered. You can take a rock and smash it. You can take a glass and smash it. You can do things to alter reality. But some things that are done cannot be undone, is the point. Once it's manifested, it's determined in reality, and it can't be undone. So if you want to change things again, if a glass has been created, but you want to uncreate a glass, you want to destroy a glass, well then you need to go back from effect of the effect on reality that's a glass created, and you need to go back to causality, and you're going to go back through the process of consciousness in order to break the glass, which is what you want to do, which is not a right action as far as I'm concerned, but it's an action anyways. The process of consciousness does not require true knowledge, true care, or true courage and willpower. You can just act on foolishness as well. So the free will choice, the randomness, is where we affect reality, and determinism is where we are affected by reality. Causes are many. We choose one out of the many infinite possibilities in our mind and our consciousness, which I've talked about in other infographic presentations. We choose one. Previous effects affect our choices. Courage and willpower actualize our care and convictions. So first you have the care and the convictions, what you want to do, and then the willpower and the courage make it happen. And on causality, determinism, effects manifest and are. The change happened and can't be undone. New effects can be created through causes, action and reaction, cause and effect. So you can create new things through causal forces. So you got to go back inside and remanifest new aspects of action and behavior to create new things in reality. But what has previously been done, as soon as it's done, it's no longer in the present, it becomes the past. As soon as something is done, it becomes the past. You're no longer in the present. The present is never actually here. You're living for the future, and as soon as something is done, it becomes the past. The now is like a state that doesn't even exist. In our minds, we're living for the future, and we're in the now, but as soon as something happens, it becomes part of the past for us to think about it. It's no longer in the now. So we're actually never living in the now. I'm just making a point where we have to focus on what's going on right now and not worry about the future and not become depressed over the past and not being anxious over the future. That's not what I'm saying to do. What I'm saying is the past is where things actually are, and the future is where things are going to be. But right now, things are here, but as soon as we see them, as soon as we experience them, it actually becomes part of what actually is manifested in concrete, which is in the past. Right now, things are being created by the moment. or things exist moment by moment, and if we want, we can end their existence because we have that creative power to do good and evil, like breaking the glass. Anyways, enough of a tangent on that. I don't even remember why I brought that up. We'll just continue with the next slide, the next infographic, number 4, and it says Causality, Consciousness, and Choice. This is a combination of the infographic number 1 and number 3 combined together, and then we get this, which is a remade version of my Circle of Life infographic. A more basic version of the Trinity of Consciousness and Cause and Effect, and then we're going to go get to the remade version of the infographic on the Circle of Life, which is the next infographic, I believe. So here we have Causality, Consciousness, and Choice. Causal agents sow and reap reality. We sow into reality to affect it. We reap from reality for it to affect us. On the left we have, well, this time I inverted it more to match the circular process movement. So before I had the left, which had the green, because that's where I was starting from top to bottom on the left. But this time, the green is on the right, so I just put the color on the right, just for that little note. So we'll start on the right because that's where we start, is the causes. No, actually we'll start with what we reap, since what we do is based on what's in reality before us. In order to create in reality, there's something already there for us to create into and be affected by, care for, and will, encourage, and all that. So REAP is Reciprocal Entropy Accumulation Process. That's just an acronym I came up with for REAP, because it is reciprocal, and it is an entropy accumulation process whereby if we do not correct the entropy, we are going to reap that entropy. And if we output entropy and disharmony and discord and conflict and decay and stagnation, well, that's going to end in nothing changing, no choice, all determinism, and it's just going to lead to our destruction. We always have a choice, but if we're not taking the choice and we're just going to engage in the same ways, we're going to end up in destroying ourselves. So we reap. Effects produced go out into the world and interact with other manifestations to reciprocally affect us all. Rejection of truth, morality, and natural law will reciprocates as chaos or entropy. So if you create reality in rejection of natural law, you're going to reap what you sow in a negative way, which is the consequences. So usually we look at reaping as a negative. I know you reap what you sow, but it's also a positive. You reap what you sow. And that's more a reward as opposed to a consequence. So again, I have the same thing as the previous infographic. When you reap, you have no choice. The effects are going to hit you even if you want it or not. That's causality, cause and effect. It's determinate. In reality, it's manifested. It's affected by reality. So I'm not going to reread it. It was already there. I guess I will. Effects manifest and are. The change happened and can't be undone. New effects can be created through causes. Action and reaction, cause and effect. So it's just the process of causality. That you can't change what's already happened, and it's going to hit you, and you can't make it not hit you. If we destroy our planet, it's going to hit all of us. When we pollute our environment and pollute our water, it hits all of us. The corporations and the companies make their money, but it's the rest of us that pay. It's natural law. We let them. We could go destroy. We could do like Fight Club. That's a very important movie in terms of the end. I found the whole Fight Club thing idiotic. But the end of the movie was the important part, where they actually took responsibility and started putting an end to things that were evil. So we could all do that. Oh, you want to take down a corporation? No problem. Gather a few thousand people, and who's going to stop you? You'd have no right to create evil and poison us, so we're going to destroy your corporation. There's not going to be any more jobs because you won't have a building to go back to work into. Not talking about murdering innocent people or killing guilty people. I'm just talking about ending the aspects of reality that could allow them to perpetuate the evil. Or we can just let it continue and, let ourselves be killed. Or we can take the longer road of not acting ever, even if we have a majority, and we'll talk evil to death. Yeah. Speak truth into existence and never act. Well, that's not going to get you anywhere. Eventually, there's a certain point, which I've mentioned in previous audios ago. Maybe it was Natural Law, Heaven and Hell, Bible Symbolism. I don't remember. But there's a quantum shift, critical mass required in order to shift the action from the vocal vibration of speech into the physical vibration of force in physical reality to end evil. But back to the infographic. So we have a segment of will, and this is the acronym I came up for sow. So we reap what we sow. And it's a segment of will because will is what sows things in reality. Manifesting consciousness produces effects in the world. Each individuated unit of consciousness is a portion or segment of will. And that would be the all one, higher, unified consciousness, that one thing, the one singularity, God, Spirit, etc., that higher force. Each individuated unit of consciousness is a portion of that higher will. And because we are individuated, we have free will. On top of that individuated aspect of higher will. It's a segment or portion of higher will. But it doesn't mean it is the higher will itself. No, because it's individuated with its own free will as its own unit of consciousness. It's not the one consciousness, it's a unit of consciousness itself. Alignment of our will with higher will produces right action. So here's another aspect of harmony and unity and equilibrium, true balance, balance between the left and right, mind and heart. We're not balancing good and evil, we're not balancing truth and falsity. Balance is not a blind aspect of reality, a blind correspondence, a blind as above, so below. No, you have to actually recognize what needs to be balanced and not just apply it haphazardly like a dumbass, which is what most people do. Oh, life is about balance. No, it's not. Certain things are about balance, and most things are one way, because the truth is one way. People don't understand how to reconcile beliefs, because they apply their beliefs whole scale across all of reality, blindly, in a blind correspondence, in blind fractographic, holographic simulation. They're all, it's a hologram, it's as above, so below, the spirit, and blah, 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 new age, blah, 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 blah. All this bullshit. It's blind correspondence because they can't actually think for themselves and see where their conception actually is represented and reflected in reality. No, they don't want to look at reality and see if their inducted concepts, either they inducted them themselves or they were inducted into them as indoctrination. They were an imposition, a belief or an idea or concept was imposed and inducted into them from an outside source, and they bought into it and they believed it, and they never questioned it, they never doubted it, and then they never thought critically about it. And by doing so, blind correspondence was applied where it applies to everything in reality. So we have a belief of, balance applies everywhere in reality, and then there's another belief of, there's the truth of balance, and then there's the truth of one way. But because people don't think for themselves, they create a whole world of contradictory belief systems and cognitive dissonance and doublethink where they hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. Oh, well, balance applies everywhere. It's correspondence, as above, so below. It's a universal principle. Let's read the Kybalion and just believe everything the Kybalion says. And that book is dangerous. For feeble minds, you're going to get sucked into bullshit. Yeah, blind correspondence. So We got correspondence and balance everywhere. We got to apply balance everywhere in our blind correspondence. But we also got truth is one way. So we got to apply that everywhere. And then when we actually think about it, then there's a contradiction between our belief that balance needs to be applied everywhere and our belief that truth is one way. So which one do you think is going to get abandoned when people are focused on pleasure, maintaining the current condition, maintaining their comfort and convenience? Do you think they're going to seek the hard, narrow path of trials and tribulations of truth and morality? Or do you think they're going to maintain their attachment to an erroneous conception about blind correspondence, and they're going to keep their attachment to balance being required in everything? Because the conflict is, say in the animal issue, animals don't matter morally, or if some matter morally, then only some matter morally and others don't, which is a moral inconsistency, and it's a disharmony. And right there, you're not in unity consciousness. You're not understanding morality. You're not in unity with reality. You might be in unity consciousness, ignoring things and in a false unity consciousness, but you're not united with reality and truth to see things as they are. So of course you want to maintain your current condition, your current convenience and comfort, and not have to change. So you're going to choose to believe that life is all about balance. So you got to balance. You got to balance eating plants with eating animal flesh, because that's more preferable to your worldview and self-image, rather than accept the truth and morality that it's wrong, that it's immoral, and it's an evil act. It's much easier to reject that truth is one way and morality is one way, and contradictions do not produce morality and truth. It's a lot easier to believe whatever you want and believe in blind balance and all this crap. Alright, so that's enough for a 10-minute rant there. Sorry about that. I just wanted to get that out because it was a thought process I was on. So we have, to continue from sowing, that's where we have choice and free will, randomness, where we affect reality. What we sow is what we reap, and it's all based on us. We are the causal force that sows into reality, and then what we sow collectively in the aggregate comes back and we all reap it. Or individually, you slap someone and they slap you back. Cause and effect. Once you slap someone, you can't undo it. What are you going to reap? Well, that person's going to reap the effects, which is being slapped. They got slapped. They can't undo it. And now as a causal force, they can choose of their own free will to slap you back. Or do something worse because you had no right to do it. Whatever. And that effect is something they chose, and then they produce an effect that is determinate. You can't change it. If they shoot a gun and the bullet's heading towards you, you can't undo the bullet being shot towards you, and then you're going to die. You can't change it. Maybe you can jump out of the way, because now you recognize this aspect of reality, something that's going to affect you, an effect that will affect you, a potential stimulus. And then you choose to generate a cause, which is get the hell out of the way, and then you act by jumping out of the way. So if someone's throwing a piece of wood instead of a bullet. The bullet's too fast to jump out of the way, I guess. You can throw a piece of wood or whatever. Anyways. So we'll go on to the next infographic. Number 5. This is aggregate sowing and reaping. So this follows from the previous one, where causal agents sow and reap reality. Where we reap and sow. So we have created miniature models in sowing, showing how the aggregate sowing and reaping works, which is how we're all in this together on one spaceship Earth, and what we all do is going to affect everyone. So we are all in this together. Our actions affect others, and their actions affect us. As one suffers, we all suffer. So now you can understand how this aspect of universal care, agape, the force of love is the expansion of consciousness and into truth and morality. That's what care is about. It's to get you to truth and morality. To get you to care about other things. To get you to care more about yourself, other humans, other animals. To get you to care about the planet. So as one suffers, we all suffer. Who's suffering? Animals are suffering. Plants do not suffer. Minerals do not suffer. Go look at my etymological work. I've been doing a lot of work on this. The last one was Living, Action, Choice. I forget the title. There's like 15 etymological words that I look into. Words that I look into the etymology of, I mean. Prior to that, there's Tracing Reality, A Visionary Quest of Wisdom. There's Characters in Our Character. There's Axioms, Existence, Consciousness, and Identity. Bearing Good and Evil. I've done a lot of etymological work. Plants do not suffer. Animals suffer. So as one suffers, we all suffer. The realm of suffering has to do with animals of free will capacity to express consciousness. Plants do not have free will capacity to express consciousness. They are another form of consciousness living in their own reality. Anyways, all this will be explained in the big natural law presentation I will do. I'm just mentioning little aspects to connect a few dots if you're able to connect them, if you're able to understand at your level of consciousness. So as we and others sow, so shall we and others reap. So the individual is where we have consciousness as a causal agent. And we are the sower, the segment of will. And then we have the world, which is reality, which is where our actions go into, and other people's actions come out of to affect us. So reality is collective co-creation. Causality, the individual is consciousness and the causal agent, which helps to influence and create collective co-creation. Consciousness and reality. Consciousness affects reality, and reality affects consciousness. Causal agents sow into the collective co-creation, and then the collective co-creation reaps onto the causal agent, the sower. And the reaper, again, is the reciprocal entropy accumulation process. So on the bottom left, we have a remade version of the previous infographic. So you have the causal agent, sowing causes, and within the causal agent, you have effects, input. Reality is affecting us, so that's what we're reaping. And it comes into thoughts and emotions, we process it, and then we determine what to do, and then eventually we act. And then the output is the effect, and that's reality is affected. We're affecting reality, and then after we reap what we and others do to affect reality. So that's how we sow our causes. And everyone is doing this. So on the right side in the world, this is where you have the aggregate connection of the causal agents interconnecting in the web or field of reality or natural moral law, in the field of cause and effect. So as each person sows, this goes out into reality, into the big web, and the chaos theory and butterfly effect. And who knows, eventually it comes back into someone's life. Some action created this, that, and the other. People reacted in a certain way, and people reacted in emotional responses. And people reacted violently, or they did something irrational and hurt someone, and someone hurt someone else, and someone hurt someone else, and then 10 years later, those actions come back to you through the causal relations of other people hurting other people, and it comes back to you, even though you have no idea where it comes from or why it was done, and you think, and it is someone doing something wrong to you, but it could be because you did something wrong back 10 years ago that eventually manifested in this point, as I mentioned, the chaos theory and the butterfly effect. These are just unseen aspects, hidden dimensions of the world. This is why I call it a field or a web or a force. When we act in reality, so this world web here, this isn't physical. It is representative of reality, but it's also hidden in terms that these spirals, we don't see them. They could go on for 10 years or 1 year or a week. It's not instantaneous like when we slap someone and our sowing goes directly into their reaping. Because you can have two of these things connected where you have thoughts, emotions, and actions that output and sow an effect. But that effect is slapping someone, and then they receive that as a reaping into themselves, and then they send that back onto you as a slapping. That's a redressing. That's a reciprocal redressing of the wrong. If someone slaps you and you slap them back, that's a one-for-one relationship. That's the prime ratio. That equals 1. 1 over 1 equals 1. A 1-to-1 ratio is a representation in a dualistic aspect of the one, the all, the singularity. And this is going to be in my future presentation as well. I'm just bringing this in because it relates. So we'll continue to the next infographic. And this is the big remake of the Circle of Life. So this one is called Causality, Consciousness, Choice, and Trivium, where we are reaping effects and sowing causes. Reaping effects on the top and sowing causes on the bottom. So rather than a slanted infographic of the circles matching the triangle, thought, emotion, action, this one I put up to down because it's reflective of a horizontal line dividing cause and effect, which if you look at the previous presentation on, months ago anyways, on the Circle of Life infographic, which is this one is based upon, that one you'll see where cause is and effect is and how it relates. And that one's more color coordinated in the specific parts, and they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for the aspects of consciousness. Well, this one I color coded it more, and I didn't do 1, 2, 3. So we have our Trinity of Consciousness. See, again, this is where I realized my thoughts aren't colored, not my thoughts, my colors aren't right. Because the triangle is supposed to be green, because that's supposed to be the unity of consciousness. So then logically, causes and sowing would be blue, because that's the complementary aspect of cause and effect. 1 for 1 is red and blue, not green. So that whole aspect of causality being green and effects being red is completely wrong when you're looking at it in an aspect of trying to unify consciousness and causality and other aspects of reality with causality and creating a unified color symbolism. So if you only want to look at causality itself, well, red has 2 complements, green and blue. But in terms of the color spectrum, it's red and blue that are more complementary opposites, in some ways oppositional. They're not opposites like black and white, but the red and blue are the complementary opposites, and then you have green as the unifier. Because if you look at the color spectrum, green is in the middle, red is low, and blue is high. That's why you have low consciousness red, high consciousness blue, and green in the middle. My other infographics, which is outside of this specific color symbolism, so different colors mean different things, but I'm talking about blue and red are more appropriate as so-called opposites or complements, because green is the actual middle color. So if you're going to represent middle and balance, you're going to use green, which is why this infographic is not done correctly, because the blue triangle is supposed to be green and the cause is supposed to be blue. Thank you very much. So our thoughts, emotions, and actions, there's the Trinity of Consciousness. We also have a Trinity of the Trivium, which is what the Trivium is 3. We have input, grammar, and knowledge, and then processing, logic, understanding, and then output, rhetoric, and wisdom. So we have the stimulus from the environment going into the grammar, logic, input, which is who, what, where, when that manifested. That goes into our thoughts, so we can process it, quote mind, which is internal, unseen, and knowledge and thought allows us to process and understand our environment and events better. So from stimulus we get to thinking, and that leads us to processing, using logic to understand our reality better, and then we understand why the manifestation occurred through logic. It's the causal factor of why. Emotions are internal, unseen, the quote heart, and they feed back with thoughts. Eventually, we care to create a manifestation that will drive us in certain directions and ways of living. And this is the choice, free will, randomness, to create the effect. That's why we have our thoughts and emotions as the internal, unseen aspect, causal, sowing part of our free will choice. to create that response. We have stimulus, thinking, and response. And that's stimulus is input and thought, thinking is processing, logic, understanding, and emotion, and response is our output, rhetoric, wisdom, and action. So we have inside the Trinity of Consciousness, which was already explained, we have knowledge and mind, juxtaposed with heart and care, unified together to develop the courage and the willpower to act in the external scene dimension. So that the output, rhetoric, and wisdom is how the manifestation occurred, and it helps us determine how to live and what to do. And that's based on our thoughts and emotions, on the input and grammar knowledge, and the processing, logic, and understanding to arrive at that output, rhetoric, and wisdom for the effects we produce into the world. And that's our willpower to actualize the care we have. So what has been output is available for input again. And that's why this is reciprocal, it's a cycle. The events effects affect us. So that's why there's aggregate sowing and reaping. Because as each person does this, other actions come in. It's not necessarily your own actions. You're not stuck in an infinite loop yourself. It's that actions come in from the world where you have no choice. It's part of natural law determinism. You experience the effect. So when someone does something, it's done. It's determinate. It's a manifested aspect of nature. So hence it's in nature, it's natural, and it's there. You're experiencing that effect. It's part of cause and effect. It's part of the law. So that's a summary of this infographic. There's a lot of information in here for you to contemplate on if you're not aware of all the parts, pieces. Please do so if you need to. The next infographic is reality affection. So this deals more with what I've been doing and how we're affecting reality and how reality is affecting us. This deals more with how we follow man's will, or our ego, versus natural law's will. So what do you care about? Do you choose the left hand or the right hand? Is the left hand of God or the right hand of God? That's why I have two images here. Well, not two images, but in the background there's another opaque, faded aspect of two hands. One's the left hand, one's the right hand. And then you have care, because this is what's determining it. What do you care about? What do you choose? Because your care is your driving force and motivation for what you choose to act upon through your courage and will. So we have free will, choice, and care. Do we care for a lack of truth, or do we actually care for truth? If we care for truth, then we're going to go with unity with truth and morality. On the right-hand path, we're going to align with the higher will of natural law, chosen as our own will. So rather than choose our own bullshit, pleasure trap, and ego, and all this crap, we're going to choose to understand what the higher will is as representative of the truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law. Then we're going to choose right to live in that will and manifest in right action. And then reality is affected in the end. So if we choose the left-hand path of lack of truth or apathy for truth, then we have a disunity from truth and morality instead of unity. And natural laws will be violated by choosing our own will and, quote, law as the way to live. That's wrong action. We're not living according to what's right, we're living according to what's wrong, based on our dictates of being an arbiter of truth and a God delusion, saying what morality is because we don't want to learn what morality actually is. And as a result of wrong actions, we affect reality. So we come in, and natural law is just cause and effect. Whatever we do is what we produce back on ourselves. Natural law is just, that's why I say natural law is us. We are causal agents who can act in the capacity as natural law causal agents of reciprocity and redress. So from reality being affected, we get to natural law, which is where we have, again, the left hand. This time it's reciprocity, and the right hand of reciprocity, rather than the left and right hand of sowing. So I had made it into the shape of a heart. So this is the shape of a heart because it's affection, And as I mentioned in infographic 2, you have cognitive, affective, and conative for thoughts, emotions, and actions. So we're sowing to affect reality, and then we reap reality to be affected by reality. So this is reality affection. So since we're talking about affection, and that is emotions, heart, and care, well, that's why I made it into the shape of a heart. And I put care in the back. So in the heart shape, you have the left hand and the right hand path, and then at the bottom, and then we go internally into the heart for natural law reaping, how it really affects us. So this is, there's multiple layers of symbolism. Then you have the smaller heart. I tried to make a heart shape, but I didn't have as many points of data, and there wasn't as much space, so I couldn't make it into a heart. We have the external heart on the outside, the left and right hand path, and then it affects us, and then it goes internal. So there's that aspect of symbolism in this infographic. So it goes internally into us, into natural law as the left hand or the right hand. So either the left hand, what we're going to get back is chaos reciprocity, and if we did things right in the right hand, then we're going to get back order reciprocity. And there's another infographic. Truth, natural law, heaven and hell, Bible symbolism, where I go into some aspects of Bible symbolism as it relates to some aspects of Egyptian symbolism with Ma'at and Isis and Isfet and Eris. So if you choose to live in the higher will, it's the right hand and you'll get order. If you choose not to live in the higher will and choose your own lower will, which is in violation of the higher will, then you're going to get chaos reciprocity in the end as what you reap. And then another aspect I added above this is how natural law, even the reciprocity and the reaping of things we output, that is delayed. There is a reality buffer in place through artificial means. Now, this artificial means is the system of living we've created, where we can insulate ourselves from reality. So there's either a conduction, where it happens right away. You can have conduction of the left hand or conduction of the right hand. You can have conduction of chaos or order. It can happen right away. You can see manifestations of your own actions and the effects they produce in the world. You can see them happen right away. Or they take 100 years or 200 years in the aggregate for us to see what they're doing. And these artificial constructs, these institutions we've erected, act as reality buffers because these are artificial constructs that did not prior exist in reality, that are not part of natural developments. These are artificial constructs from our creative capacities, of our infinite potential, of our consciousness and free will. We choose to create these artificial aspects from the unreality of our subjective multiverse in our minds, in our consciousness. We manifest these conceptions, these ideas, into reality through our hands, our arms, the artificial. And these are the things that can act to conduct or insulate us from reciprocal feedback of actions. I have a little bit more infographics on that when we get into reality, which I'll put into the next part. But in the end, whether we face it in our own lifetimes, the true self that incarnates over and over as an individuated aspect of consciousness from the one all singularity source consciousness, eventually the gajillions of incarnations that keep happening in order for evolution to succeed, they're going to reap the effects of previous true self individuation consciousness that manifested negative consequences, negative actions that eventually will manifest as negative consequences in the immediate future or in 100 years or 200 years. Eventually, the wrong action is felt. Maybe not by the person there, which is why this is how karma works and this is how reincarnation works. As you will be back, but not as you, because you, as an individuated unit of consciousness, only exist from life to death. That is your lifetime. You have a short amount of time, make the most use of it. Go learn, educate, teach. Care to learn and then care to teach. So you have a limited amount of time, and once you're dead, you're dead. But the true self is eternal, and it's the true self for everybody. And this is representative of, this is the source of truth, love, good, or this is an aspect of truth, love, good, Either way, it's related to the same force. I haven't contemplated enough in which order, or which one generated who, which one resulted from what. But it's all the same force, and it's all conceptual, it's all speculative, but it makes a hell of a lot more sense than the what I consider pseudo-spiritual beliefs of reincarnation and karma that have been perpetuated for thousands of years. Why? Because I've taken concepts, words and their concepts, and I've refined the concepts with validation and deduction back to reality in order to see how they can actually work. And some of the things that are proposed are ludicrous, and they don't stand up to validation in reality. They're merely belief. They're wholly inductive beliefs that are unsubstantiated in reality through deduction. It's only a belief that it is. It could be that way, but I have another model that explains things much more accurately, which is what I've been saying about karma and reincarnation. It makes a lot more sense. I go with what makes sense. Things that I can't detect and I can't verify. Oh, you have a soul unit that is actually you, and then you reincarnate, and then other people have different soul units, and then after you die, then you reincarnate again. It doesn't make any sense. Actually take time to think about it. It's a bullshit hogwash story to make you feel good, to make you feel like you're immortal, that there's an afterlife, and that you continue. No, you don't. What does continue is the true self, which is what we have to act to embody, actualize, realize, individuate ourselves into living in the aspects and qualities of the true self, which is truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law. Okay, so after that reality buffer, and then the reaping comes, we're affected by reality. And then again, we have the thoughts, emotions, and actions as a causal agent. And then same thing happens, thoughts, emotions, actions, then we sow. We reap, affected by reality, and then again we create actions and behaviors into reality, we sow into reality, and we reap from reality. And then it keeps going, and free will, choice, and care. What we reap from reality, do we want to learn from our past mistakes, from what people created 100 or 200 years ago that we are now reaping in karma as a collective aggregate co-creation? We're now reaping it. Do we want to change our ways? Or do we want to keep perpetuating the same evil, keep ourselves enslaved and enslave people even greater into the future? Keep degenerating our consciousness, not think, engage in mind dribble, in drool. The movie Idiocracy is where we're headed in the future. So then we sow into reality again and affect it. And we can keep going into our lack of care for truth, or we can actually start to give a shit and care about truth and morality, unite with it, live it, create with it, affect reality with it, and then have that reality that we create in alignment with truth, love, good, morality, natural law, true self, higher will. That will affect us, and we will like that result, that order, that right-hand path, and we'll continue to create in that right-hand path, and we'll just get more of that right-hand path. But if you create in the left-hand path, you just get more of the left-hand path. The next infographic is Empowering Change. And this is, it deals with care for truth, which will be in the next infographic. It deals how we can process events. And this I go into multiple layers of will and courage and how they apply in two aspects instead of just one. So we have, and we'll start on the right side, we have free will, choice to care and be empowered to change things with understanding why of knowledge, which is what. So the knowledge, the grammar input, what, and then we have our understanding, processing, and logic, why, the causality. So we have our situation, our event problem. We realize and recognize reality in its current situation, in its beauty and horror, and we see it for what it is. So we're empowered, level 1, from facing the problem. That's level 1 empowerment. If you choose to instead ignore reality in its current condition and you only want to look at the positive and a positivity mask and the optimism bias, then you will not be empowered to see reality as it is. So the first step is truth and morality, is to recognize truth as it really is in its current condition. And that empowers you in the first level to face it as it is. Then you have a choice. You can develop care, choice, and will to change things. Do you want to change things once you're empowered with that knowledge that things are not right and that they need to be changed? So choosing to change and the drive to do it. Will and care are not enough. We need knowledge and understanding to do the right thing. So even though you see the problem, you recognize it, you're empowered through that recognition of what is wrong and needs to change. And then you have the care, choice, and will to change it, but that's still not enough. Because if you choose to act from that capacity of ignorance, of not having spent enough time to learn, in my infographic on time learning versus time acting, you just need to have a certain time learning in order to bring yourself to the understanding of what right action is, and so that you can act correctly in wisdom. So you need knowledge first. So we collect info on the situation. First we recognize it's wrong, right? We're empowered and we need to do something about it. But we still need more information to know what needs to be done about it. So we look at what there is so that we can understand why it's happening and then how to change it so that it can become the something else of what it currently is, than what it currently is. So after knowledge, we collect the what, we understand. We process the info to determine the root causal factors, which is the why. Then, after we understand the root causal factor, the why, now we're in empowering level 2. Now we're at the true level of empowerment, not simply of recognizing the problem and wanting to do something about it, but at the empowerment level of actually being able to do something about it. Not just wanting to do something about it, of having that power in us, the energy and the fuel to do something about it. Now we have the power, energy, and fuel to do something correctly about it. So level 2, from finding the solution, that's from the why, from understanding and logic. So there's a whole process to all this. That's why the circle of life, or the causality, consciousness, and trivium infographic, it represents life, and that's why I call it the circle of life. And I'm calling it now I think in my new infographics, I'm calling it the wheel of life, because it deals with more ancient knowledge in terms of the wheel of life and the symbolism there. They were all talking about the same thing, using different symbols than what I'm doing. So after we're empowered with that real level to actually do something properly, because the solution is understood from seeing the problem clearly, now we have the willpower and force. Rather than the care and choice and will, now we actually have the willpower developed. Because the care at first wasn't enough, because you needed the knowledge and understanding to empower you into the courage and willpower to use the force properly, to act rightly instead of acting foolishly because you didn't have the knowledge and understanding. So in the willpower and force, we actualize right action, and that's the how. From the what to the why to the how. And what results is the change. We see the results manifested in the real world. Now, alternately to this process, which many people fail to engage in, we have learned helplessness. That's where people think no change is possible. That's that specific mindset. If you're in this mindset, you're not going to be in the part I just read. Because you're not looking at the situation openly. You're not even empowered to do so. You don't have the will to change things because you're in learned helplessness, because you're ignorant. So you don't care to learn and understand more in order to understand how to change things. You're already in a self-defeated victim mentality of, oh, well, there's nothing I can change, it's not possible. So you don't even have the will to change because you're not empowered, because you're not looking at reality honestly. You might see some negatives, but it doesn't. How come it's not empowering you to do something about it? You're facing the problem. Do you want to change it? Okay, maybe you want to change it. Maybe you did reach that level. Maybe you understood reality. Maybe you were empowered. Maybe you had the care and the willpower to change it, but you still didn't understand what was required, and that was the choice to learn more. So instead of learning more, you chose to tent pitch yourself at, oh, well, I see reality as it is, and oh, I feel it, and I'm empowered to do something about it, but I don't know what to do. Nothing's possible. I'm a helpless little victim. There's nothing I can do. Why are you at that stage? Because you stopped. You didn't go to the knowledge to learn more about the situation, to learn well, can I actually change it? Why is the situation this way? In the proper understanding the root causal factors. If you don't understand why something is this way, then you're not really going to understand how to change it. So you have to understand. To understand the why, you need the what. You need to have data points on what is in reality to understand why that manifested in reality, and then you can understand how to change that manifestation in reality. But when you're in learned helplessness and no possible change, victim mentality, you're not at the knowledge part of collecting more knowledge to empower yourself to understand, to be empowered to actually change things for the better. Just the fact that you see something wrong and you don't know what to do demonstrates that you're in ignorance and confusion. The confusion demonstrates that you're ignorance. If you don't know what to do, you're confused and you're ignorant. So why don't you go learn knowledge and understanding? Why are you stopping at, oh, well, there's problems, and then instead of learning, you're remaining ignorant and doing nothing as a victim? So you're not empowered through a lack of care, lack of will and motivation for the need of change. And that's lazy, apathetic, and foolishness. And this is a result from a lack of understanding reality. And that means you're a misconceived fool. You don't understand reality, so you have misconceptions. You are fooled. You are fooled. And when you're fooled, you're lazy, apathetic, and you act foolishly. So when you're fooled, you act as a fool. Because when you're fooled, you buy into lies and falsity, and that becomes how you understand reality, and then you base your actions and behaviors in reality based on what is in reality, which is why it's a reciprocal loop in Trinity of Consciousness. What's in reality affects us, and that determines how we're going to affect and respond in reality. So if we're convinced of things and it makes us a fool, then we are going to act as a fool. And this is all resulting from, again, a lack of knowledge of reality because we are ignorant. So if we don't want to be a fool, act foolishly, or be apathetic, because we were misconceived, because we've been fooled, because we've bought into lies and falsities, well, we need to remove our ignorance. The only way that's going to happen is with knowledge. So, do you want to get out of it? Well, you need to care for truth and morality. That's the way out. You care for truth and morality, you develop knowledge, you develop understanding, and then you develop the will and motivation to change from the courage and willpower to do so. So people don't want to learn as they lack real care for truth, yet they hope to do the right thing in their ignorant state. How do you change to do the right? You learn. Learn. No, you don't. Oh, I learned from nature, God teaches me. No, you have to actually learn important things of reality. If you can't figure them out yourself, go read someone else. There's other people who have written stuff. And if you're at a point where other people have not written stuff or not talked about things, then I guess you got to figure it out yourself. And that's when you do look at reality and you bounce back conceptions that you read from other people, inductions of other ideas, and you deduce them back to reality. Or you induce ideas yourself that other people aren't thinking of, or maybe they are, but you haven't read them. So you're coming up with it all on your own, but you still need to deduce it back to reality. So you got to learn. People don't want to learn. They want to think, oh, well, I don't need to learn. I'm not going to develop logical processing capacities to understand reality more accurately. I'm just going to tell myself. I read in Wayne Dyer, and I read Greg Braden, I read Deepak Chopra, and I read all these wonderful New Age gurus. They're so wonderful. And then after I read that, and they teach me, all I need to do is, oh, the knowledge is all within myself. The knowledge of the universe is in myself. I am the universe. I am God. All I need is myself to learn. I am God. I am the universe. I am nature. All I need is nature to learn. God teaches me. Nature teaches me. I teach myself. You see how self-referential and infinitely regressive, and it's a loop of stupidity. It's like so you don't need to read anything. You don't need to learn from anyone else. You don't need to learn from those on the shoulders of giants we stand on and learn from them. No, we need to reinvent the wheel all over again. This is the ridiculousness of believing whatever you want, which is very popular in New Age circles. What I just talked about is an experience I had in my own life with a New Age. That's how idiotic they are. They don't care about right. Whenever you talk about right and wrong, for them it's, oh, you just want to be right, even when you're wrong. No, you're ego. Actually, you're the ego who doesn't care about truth, and who doesn't care about right. And if you don't care about right, guess what happens? You're going to go wrong. Because if you don't focus on doing right, you're going to go wrong because you're ignorant of what is right. So how can you be doing right if you're ignorant of what is right or wrong? You don't even care about right, so you're going to be doing wrong, and you don't care. You're going to be doing wrong as right, evil as good. Because you don't want to learn. So how do you change to do the right? You learn. So if you're at a certain level of consciousness, yeah, you can probably learn from yourself because you've developed your capacity to understand yourself. You've developed your capacity to understand reality. You've developed your cognitive capacities. You've developed your affective capacities, and you can feel and understand reality properly. So you can take reality, induct it into you, and connect many aspects of it and come up with information that other people aren't coming up with. Yes, you can learn on your own. That is mostly what I do. I look at what other people do. I learn a lot from other people, honestly. I look at their behavior and I see, why do they believe in this lie and what is preventing them from believing in this lie? And then I try to figure it out. And so I come up, pleasure trap. And all these things in reality versus perception and how we process reality. You just think about how things happen. You just think about reality. If you understand reality properly, you can express that understanding of reality properly and have other people understand it. So you don't need to read a book. You don't need to watch videos. You don't need to listen to audio. If you have the evolved consciousness capacity in order to process reality and derive understanding and meaning and definition from. But if you do not have this capacity developed, then please do continue to read, watch videos, audios, and learn. I still do learn, but I don't learn as... I still do learn from other people, but not as much as I used to before, because I've evolved to a certain point where every day I'm just uncovering things. I don't have the time to go through new information because I'm coming up with new information on my own that I'm trying to write and create infographics for and make presentations. Of course I can learn from other people. I don't have all the information in the universe, and they have stuff that I don't have, but it's time and attention. At a certain point, you have that's why there's the time learning and time acting infographic, where at a certain point, earlier you're doing most of your time learning and very few acting. And then after many years, there's a shift where you have an equilibrium, a balance, where things join in the middle, where you have an equal amount of learning and action, but your action will overtake your learning at a certain point. Which is why I'm trying to teach what I know, because I have accumulated a certain degree of correspondences with reality that enable me to process those understandings and formulate them into a rhetorical representation of infographics or text or speech like I'm doing now, whereby I can express understandings of reality that other people have not comprehended yet. And I've reached this through reading, through video, through audio, even through movies and stories and fiction, which teach through allegories and metaphors and similes, moral tales and life lessons. So you can learn from a lot of secondary experience. But the point is to learn. At a certain point, you might be capable of uncovering reality yourself, but you still do need to learn. And I do go through other people's material and stuff. It's just at a certain point, your ability to act will overcome your need for quality input from other sources, because you'll have a certain level of quality, truth, and morality that you can feed upon as a feedback and grow upon. As you evolve consciousness, gain more aspects of reality, you understand more reality, and that allows you to build upon and gain more understanding of reality. It's a self referential feedback loop that grows and progresses into the future. And it goes negative as well. If you go into the not learning and being ignorant, not using your mind, well, you're just going to stagnate into entropy and you're going to become really dumb. So you got to learn more and you got to understand reality more. And then at a certain point, after going through other people's explanations of reality and other people's models of reality and how to understand reality in ourselves, then you can do it on your own more effectively than before, where you needed external learning. But you'll always be learning from external sources all of life. That's part of the circle of life infographic. It's causality and consciousness. It feeds back. We feed back on reality. We feed reality, reality feeds us. That's the feedback loop between reality and us. So we learn. Understanding of knowledge is the power to generate the force that can move you to change. If you are not doing what needs to be done yet, or what you don't even know you are not doing right, then maybe you lack knowledge and need to learn more truth in order to develop the motivational power to engage in the change that is required. So if you're not doing what needs to be done, if you're confused, it means you're ignorant, you don't know what to do, you lack knowledge of what the right thing to do is, then learn more truth. And then you'll develop the motivational capacity to change. Because if you've reached an understanding of the situation, if you were originally empowered to do something, and you wanted to do something with the will, but then you felt hopeless, learned helplessness, you were a victim, no change is possible, that's because you're confused and you're ignorant. Why? Because you're not seeking truth. Why aren't you seeking truth yet? Well, ultimately it comes back down to a fear of truth. That is why you're ignorant of truth, and that's why you're confused, because you're apathetic for truth. You don't have the care for truth. So you don't learn the truth. If you cared to learn for truth, you would be learning it. You'd be learning about truth and morality. When it would be presented to you in your research of truth and morality, if a moral concept was presented to you, you wouldn't reject it because you actually cared for truth and morality to investigate it. That's why I know people who come across carnism, exposing their behaviors as immoral and evil, or they come across veganism as an alternative way to live, creating less harm and doing more good, by doing less harm, less immorality, and less evil. Well, they don't embrace that truth because they don't care for truth. You have to care for truth to embrace it. They just reject it because they're in fear of truth, because they don't really care for truth. They pretend like they do, but it's only actually, quote, my truth, my survival, and my freedom. If it's related to that, then they'll accept it. But if it requires things outside of themselves, like other animals, because the animals aren't going to help them bring them freedom. Only other humans are going to help them bring them freedom, because other humans are enslaving them. The other animals that aren't humans, well, they're not enslaving us, so we don't need their help. We don't need to stop harming them. But we do need to stop harming other humans, right? Because we only need other humans to help us end slavery. That's the selfishness aspect, where you don't understand, as all beings suffer, we suffer. Even though you may pretend to say that and you understand it, and you tell people you understand it, are you really acting towards bringing an end to all suffering of all beings, or are you only focusing on human beings? So how much are you understanding that all beings suffer? Seems that you're only understanding it in the capacity that they can help to end your suffering, which would be other human beings. And the other beings that can't help to bring an end to your suffering, which would be the non-human animals, well, you don't really care about them as much. You understand that it's wrong, and you may also remove yourself from participating in that exploitation, but you're still not focusing on it as much as you can. But there are people who haven't even reached that level, and they're still in rejection of the depth of truth and morality, and they just want to perpetuate their ways, their current condition, because it's more comfortable and convenient than requiring to change. And it's more comfortable and convenient than admitting you were a fool for so many years, that you lied to yourself for so many years, and that you were wrong. And that's ultimately because you're an ego. So when you don't have the ability to investigate, doubt, and be curious about truth and morality, and about your preconceptions in order to bring yourself to the position of embracing that truth because you care for it. Well, it's actually because you have fear for truth and morality, and you don't care for truth and morality. Because it's all about my freedom, my truth, my survival, more than it is about the harm you're doing to others. Because that's what it's all about. The care is about reducing your harm, and by reducing your harm, that is what will bring about your freedom and your survival and your truth. People are going at it in the wrong way. They're going at it from the selfish aspect of, well, it's only the human sphere, we got to focus on that. Get the human sphere right. Yeah, but correct the root causal factor. If you make the world vegan, if everyone goes vegan, where's all the agriculture that's being fed to animals? Where's all of the waste of the animals? Where's all the pollutants of the animals that are just bred into existence for us so that we can murder them and eat them? If they're not in existence for us to murder and eat, they don't produce the waste that goes into our water. They're not pumped full of antibiotics that goes into our water and our environment and our food. They're not creating part of the whole problem because they don't exist, because they're not raped into existence to be murdered for us. They'll be doing their own natural living in whatever natural numbers they have. And that'll get rid of so many problems we have. We'll have space to grow food for other people that are starving right now that we normally feed animals so that we can murder and eat. Let's just eat the plants ourselves. It's a lot more efficient, a lot less pollutant. It's not immoral. It's not doing evil. No, plants don't feel. Wake up, wake up. Go look at etymology. Go look at reality. You don't even understand how to read scientific data of electrochemical processes. You don't understand the difference between biological body vehicles and consciousness that can manifest through a body vehicle. Anyways, there's something I'm missing to talk about that was on the tip of my tongue from something before, but I forget. So we'll just continue with the last infographic here. This is Care for Truth. It's a continuation on the previous one. So we have on the left apathy for truth as the central driving force. So that's where you're not seeking truth. You're apathetic for truth, and that's going to produce ignorance, because you're not going to gain knowledge, you're going to remain ignorant. So that produces, when you have apathy for truth, that's believe and agree in the normality, in the current condition, the normalized state, the acceptable state. Believe in it and agree with it. Don't question it, don't doubt, and don't be curious, which is in Care for Truth on the right. You can see it's about doubting, questioning, being curious. So once you believe and accept from your ignorant state of not seeking truth and apathy for truth, you have misconceptions inducted into you, and you're fooled. You're accepting falsity over truth. Now we come back again to the Care for Truth. The apathy for truth. That apathy for truth, again, you're still apathetic for truth, and you're going to act in foolishness rather than recognize in some validation process, which is supposed to be part of understanding. You can go back and correct yourself through this central point if you develop care for truth. But if you don't, then you're just going to continue for the care for your egoic will and the apathy for right over wrong, for truth over falsity, for good over evil. And you're going to be in foolishness, which is wrong action. And the true freedom and peace cannot manifest so long as we are acting foolishly, so long as we are misconceived with false bullshit because we accept falsity, so long as we're ignorant and we're not choosing to seek truth and learn for ourselves what truth and morality is, so long as we don't care for truth, well, guess what? You're not going to get true freedom and peace. Oh, you don't want to go to veganism? Quote, veganism, or non-animal eating, non-animal murder, non-animal exploitation, non-animal enslavement? Well, you're not going to get true freedom and peace because you're not going from the proper foundation. You think you're going to get it with by having still a corrupted aspect in your being that perpetuates evil and immorality, because you don't want to understand objective morality, objective right, objective truth, objective good. You don't want to understand that. So of course you're going to keep perpetuating, and you're never going to get true freedom and peace, no matter how much you want to lie to yourself that that's what you're going to be able to create. So we have our apathy for truth keeps one in a stagnant state of ignorance of natural law. And stagnation is entropy. You're going downward and downward and downward into your own self-inflicted suffering and enslavement. That's why get out of ignorance. Don't be a fool. Don't accept misconceptions. Don't act in wrong action. Make sure to act in right action, you have to understand what's going on. You have to have the knowledge, and you have to care for truth and morality, to care to do the right thing. Because if you don't care about doing right, and you just want to say, oh, well, that's ego. You just want to be right. That's ego. That automatically demonstrates that you do not care for truth and morality. Anyone who says that you just want to be right, they're already demonstrating they do not have an understanding of truth and morality objectively, and furthermore that they do not care for truth and morality. They can pretend they do, but you see, people's expressions of their consciousness demonstrates their level of consciousness. Even if they're completely unaware of their own level of consciousness, if you are at a certain level of consciousness and you understand psychology and you understand these internal processes within ourselves, you can see the level of consciousness someone is at least compared to yours or compared to other people's, based on their own expressions of consciousness that they provide to you. You're not imagining anything. There's a lot of people who will imagine things and create fantasies of how people are and project onto other people. But if you're actually seeing what other people are expressing from their own consciousness, you can see what they're expressing. All you have to do is look at what they're doing, or look and observe. They judge, insult, and offend themselves by their own actions. All you have to do is look. So apathy for truth keeps one in a stagnant state of ignorance of natural law, going in circles, continuing to perpetuate self-inflicted suffering. This is the hamster wheel of life we're all on. We have the same mindset, same thoughts, the same actions, and we'll keep having the same results. And we're trapped in the problem and condition. The problem and condition, you go back to the previous infographic on empowering change, which is the whole thing. The learned helplessness was there's no change possible. You can't change the current condition. You can't change the current problem. You're going to be trapped in it forever and ever and ever because you're in the victim cycle. You're a victim. You're learned helplessness. No change is possible. Oh well, I might as well stay lazy and apathetic and foolish and keep my misconceptions, don't work to understand reality properly. And that would require me gaining more knowledge, so I'd prefer to remain ignorant so I can keep my misconceptions and keep acting as an apathetic, cowardly, foolish idiot, perpetuating my own stagnation and entropy into self-inflicted suffering and enslavement. From the middle, I have no true care. You're going nowhere. Nowhere. If you do not have true care, i.e., care for truth and morality, you're going nowhere. A lot of people listen to Mark Passio and they're still going nowhere. They don't have true care. They have some care, but they need to develop it a lot more to understand morality objectively. Because if you think you have true care for truth and morality, but you don't understand morality objectively, well, let me give you some information on your expression of consciousness again. And your expression of consciousness is demonstrating how you do not understand morality objectively. And why is that? Because you're still attached to certain aspects of worldview and yourself, whereby you're not able to look at yourself objectively in detached objectivism, in objective detachment, to look at your own behavior and actions honestly by comparison with the objective truth and morality that you've discovered. No, your attachment is preventing you from discovering truth and morality to the depth required to understand it more deeply. So it's again a loop, a self-referential loop. You're attached to yourself so you don't look at truth and morality. You don't understand truth and morality objectively. And the reason you don't understand truth and morality objectively is because you're attached to yourself. So you don't look at it objectively because you're attached to yourself. And then when you try to look at it objectively, you can't because you're attached to yourself. Whenever the objective morality is presented, your attachment to your self-image and worldview, oh, well, that's not right. I'm a good person. I'm not doing immoral things. No, what this person's saying is false. It's not true. That's not objective morality. If it was, I would know. If it was, I would feel it. Because I tell myself I'm in unity consciousness and I'm harmonized with natural law. So if that's true, then my thoughts, emotions, and actions are united, and that would mean I'd be able to think, or at least feel, the disharmony with my actions, and I'd be able to change, I'd be able to recognize it. But I know that I'm in unity consciousness, so everything that I think and feel that leads me to my actions is perfectly correct. There's no indoctrination, there's no programming. The cognitive dissonance is only in the lie that it's immoral. It's not that it actually is immoral. That's just a lie. That's why I'm upset. I'm not upset because I believe in a lie and I'm being confronted with that lie and the truth that it is immoral. No, no, no. I'm a perfect unity, balanced brain. I have unity consciousness. My thoughts and emotions are creating my actions, and my actions do this. So if you tell me my actions are immoral and wrong and creating evil, well, I'm going to say that you're wrong because I would be feeling it as an emotional response. That I would feel that it's wrong. But I'm not feeling it's wrong. I'm only feeling that what you're saying is wrong because you're attacking me and my behavior. And you're telling me I'm wrong, and I'm doing evil, and I'm doing immorality. That's not true because I would feel the immorality because I'm a connected, united consciousness. And I'm connected to nature and God, and I would feel if I was doing something wrong because I follow my emotions. Now I'm getting into New Age bullshit with the New Ager I lived with, who believes all this crap. Anyways, it's amazing how much people lie to themselves in the self-delusional constructs of reality we live in. Psychology is amazing. Amazing. Real psychology. I'm not talking about psychiatrists and psychologists. That's like academic retard psychology of anal logic. I'm talking about real psychology where you can verify it in reality. And things that matter like truth and morality, which none of them talk about. See, the psychologists and psychiatrists aren't really psychologists and psychiatrists. They're just money peddlers to mask your depressions and not have you uncover your disharmony with reality. Because that's what a depression actually is, and I figured this out long before I awakened on the path towards truth. Morality was, I had explained it as things not going right in your life, where you have expectations for reality to be a certain way, but reality doesn't match up to your expectations of reality. So this creates a disharmony between your perceptions of reality and reality as it actually is, and this creates the cognitive dissonance, the disequilibrium, and the doublethink, whereby you have to you have to negotiate with reality in order for your perceptions to create less disharmony and discord with how you expect, with how reality is. So your perceptions and expectations are harmonizing more with reality through a reduction in the dissonance, in the conflict, by you negotiating with reality, by you deceiving yourself, by you lying to yourself through self-deception and self-delusion. You negotiate with reality, which can't be done. But that's how people cope with things. They negotiate with reality by convincing them of things in order for the disharmony of their perceptions and expectations to match the reality that actually is. So that was a good explanation that I haven't talked about in any of my articles or other audios. So in the care for truth part, number 1, care for truth. So level 1 is seek truth. That's the first level of truth and morality, of caring for truth. Level 1, seek truth. Then you get to knowledge. And from knowledge you go to understanding. Now, the knowledge and understanding, these are the internal aspects, and this allows us to understand truth level 1, which is that which is reality. This is the realm of effects, but understood through the internal aspects of consciousness, which is obtained through knowledge of reality, and then understanding it to process it. And we do that through doubting and questioning and curiosity about reality. So truth level 1, that which is reality, is understood in this internal process, which I've put above. Then from understanding, we go to level 2 for care for truth, which is to embrace and accept the truth. When you embrace and accept the truth from what you sought and obtained, then you can go back to care for truth and care to act on your embracing of truth into the will and the courage and the will to the wisdom of right action. Now when you care for truth to act on it, now you're getting into the truth level 2, the right way and path, which is what ought to be in reality, the potential we can create and make into the actual. So the truth level 1, that which is reality, was the actual as it currently is, that you understand through knowledge and understanding. Then you embrace that understanding and you care for truth to create in alignment with that understanding. And I'm talking about more of truth and morality. So you're going to create in alignment with truth and morality. So on the left here you have care for higher will of natural moral law, care for right over wrong. So in that care for truth, once you develop an understanding of reality through knowledge, through seeking truth, which requires care for truth, you're caring for right and wrong, and that leads to truth level 2, which is the right path and the way, to live in truth and morality. So we're creating into reality based on the truth of the path and way we've developed from our internal aspects. And internally, in knowledge and understanding, the truth level 1 of reality that we've understood, that comes from the external aspect into the internal. And then after care for truth, into understanding the path and the way, then we can act externally again to output the potential of the true self into an actualized, realized, individuated manifestation of consciousness. And that's care for truth level 3, where we embody and become the truth. And that's expressed through the wisdom of right action, where we manifest in reality, in the path and way of the wisdom of right action, to be and embody the truth and morality, those values and virtues that we know are the right way to live. And ultimately, after we act, that creates the reality we live in, and then that creates the true freedom and peace that can manifest, at least in our capacity to manifest it. But since we're in an aggregate sowing and reaping, aggregate co-creation, we need to share, speak, and preach the truth that we've gained. So in the care for truth, we seek truth, we embrace it, then we embody it and live it. And then when we live it and embody it, we need to get other people to live it and embody it. So we need to share, speak, and preach the truth. To use the force of vibration from our mouth to speak the vibratory force into creation, into existence. And that will influence and affect other people. And with that, true freedom and peace can manifest in the aggregate as we get everyone else to listen and then develop their own care for truth, seek truth, embrace truth, accept truth, embody and be truth, and then they themselves can help what we're already doing to share, speak, and preach the truth. So the care for truth is, instead of on the left where you're stuck in the hamster wheel, you're trapped in the problem condition, the care for truth is the thing, the most important thing to get us out of our self-inflicted suffering, our self-imposed enslavement. It's natural law empowerment. Care and drive for truth leads to generating in principles of truth and morality. It's all about care for truth, which leads to greater attainment of truth, and then actualization and realization of truth in our lives through our ability to express consciousness, to express the true self, the higher will, to express truth, love, good, right, morality, natural law, through our own free will, creative capacities to do so, to create in good instead of evil, to create in the right hand instead of the left hand, because we do it all to ourselves, which is why we are natural law. We are natural moral law. It's not some force doing it to us. We do it to ourselves. We do it to ourselves. Care for truth and learn. Thank you very much for listening. Have a nice day. Take care. Peace.